Okay. So this past week I've been working more on this non-efforting. And last week we talked about judgment and the way that we can fight against ourselves when we have, judgment saying one thing a should, and the part of us that's saying no, and pulling those into alignment, and how that kind of reduces that sense of internal efforting. A completely different way, it's almost like the end tail of that, that might be like the beginning of a project, coming into an alignment in efforting and non-efforting. And at the end of that is the integration side of things. It's like after you have worked and worked and worked and worked, do you actually exhale, take a breath, let it integrate before you go on to the next thing? This is a really critical part of that non-efforting. For those of us that practice yoga, the shavasana at the end isn't just a catch your breath time. It truly is a time for your body to adapt and to actually settle into this new open way of having the muscles move. And so it's like it's a sinking in, it's a feeling into a new way of being. So that resting, that point at the end, is very important part of the practice. Sometimes I think about it in terms of cooking. I'll throw a lot of vegetables together and cook and make this big old fabulous thing with lots of spices and food. Put it in the pot, put the lid on it. At some point, you got to let it cook. It's like if you're always throwing stuff in there, if you're always poking at it, it doesn't actually cook. It's like you have to leave the lid on it. You walk away, you smell it, you let it cook and do its thing. And I'm finding that the more work I do internally, the more processing I do, the more inquiries I do, or, the more looking at patterns, the more simmering time I'm needing. It's that sense of like, yes, it's great to go look and dive deep and to explore and to have thoughts go and try to, put together ideas. And at some point, it is that sense of like, okay, hands off now. Hands off, time to rest, let things simmer and percolate. From this like internal sense, this can look a whole bunch of different ways, this resting. This could be, just mindful breathing. It could be just paying attention to the senses. It could be gardening. I find myself knitting again, where I'm just like sitting here for an hour, where my hands are busy, but my mind is simmering. And this process, this simmering, this resting, this non-efforting, this hands off of the internal experience is a really just allowing things to cook and bubble without poking at them. So sometimes in our mindfulness practice, we zoom in, we look really closely, we feel it, we, feel into it. And this is almost that sense of like, that's it. Nothing more to it. Just letting thoughts be there. They come and they go, but I'm not even tuning them out. I'm not paying attention to them. They can come in. I can almost like hear the thoughts kind of bubbling and thinking, and then all of a sudden something will pop out and I'm like, oh, interesting. But that's it. And then it goes and keeps bubbling and, just doing its little thing back here on the back burner. So it's like you don't have to tune the thoughts out. You don't have to try to make anything happen. You don't have to make the feelings happen or the sensations happen, or you don't even have to zero in on anything or zero out on anything. It's that just really relaxed. I'm doing nothing. I am truly doing nothing. If judgments are here, judgments are here. I'm just going to watch them. If thinking is here, oh, thinking is here. If feelings here, feelings here. It's a really hands off. I am just letting things simmer. And so I thought that one of the ways that we can play with this today would be to actually bring up something that you're thinking about or you're working on, something that you've been musing on. And I'll give you some time to play with it, to let the thoughts, the feelings, the physical sensations come up, and you can explore that. And then about halfway through, it's that letting go. It is that transitioning from paying attention and focusing in to just hands off. Now I'm just going to kind of breathe. And maybe I'll notice something, maybe I won't. But just that hands off, I'm just going to rest. And I don't have to make anything happen. It doesn't have to give me anything. I don't have to get anything from this work that I've been doing. Sometimes when I'm really working on something, I want an end product. It's like, I want to figure out this problem. This needs to be finished, period. And so that's good. That's necessary. And there are times to just hands off, let it simmer. It's like, let the cooking happen. And this is how integration happens. It really is that sense of, you can keep learning and pushing and doing and exploring all you can. But if you don't pause, let it simmer and integrate, it all just stays intellectual. It doesn't actually get lived out into our lives. So rest time, integration time, hands off simmering time. This is part of that non-efforting. And that I'm remembering, my meditation teacher was teaching this to me. He was like, you just sit. And one of the students was like, well, what do I do when I'm sitting? He's like, you sit. She's like, so my butt's going to get enlightened. And he's like, sure. It's just sitting. There's nothing to do. There's nothing to not do. There's nothing to prevent yourself from doing. It's just sitting. It really is no performing, no trying to keep my attention anywhere, just sitting. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll practice. So just beginning here, noticing your breath. Really tuning in even to the sound of your breath, hearing the inhale and the exhale. They can be very subtle sounds. Sometimes it's that mark between, is it a sound or is it a vibration and just a sensation without being able to really hear it? But really beginning to draw that attention to the breath. Noticing the movement in the chest as you breathe. And the chest can move front to back, with the ribs opening and expanding out away from the sternum with the inhale. And now relaxing back down with the exhale. Sometimes it can almost feel like there's a movement opening in the back too, towards the spine, where both the front and the back of the rib cage feel just a little bit wider. And maybe feeling that place in your spine, back behind your lungs. Noticing how the ribs move just in little tiny ways, right there around your spine. And feeling the breath pull out to the sides, And the ribs open up underneath the arms. That side to side movement. And then feeling that up and down filling of the torso. As you inhale, the breath pulling all the way down to your belly, rising all the way up to your collarbones. And then pulling back in with the exhale. There's an inhale, a filling and expanding out. And then exhale. Everything floats back into the center and rests. Noticing how even the breath has that little pause, the little rest at the end of the exhale before it steps into the next inhale. And from this place of breathing, doing that internal scanning just to kind of take the temperature, just a quick mental check-in, noticing the physical sensations that are present right now. You can scan from your head all the way down your body, down to your feet. You might say, the physical sensation of tension in my shoulders is here. Just a quick check-in. What's present right now? And then doing the same thing with the thoughts. What are the thoughts that are present right now? Thoughts about what you were working on before this practice. Thoughts about what you're doing afterwards. All kinds of thoughts. Just noticing thinking. And then checking in with what emotions are present right now. It might be just a simple contentment. It might be a complex layering of 5 different things. And then coming back to the breath, the inhale and the exhale. And from this place, we get to play and practice, practicing transitions, transitioning into rest. And so just take a couple minutes to play with something that's on your mind right now, something you've been thinking about, something that's bothering you, something that you're working on. But you can even notice as I'm talking, your body starts to react, starts to shift. The thoughts kind of start spinning up. That just mindful awareness, noticing the physical sensations, the emotions, the thoughts. Letting your mind play with whatever it is that it's been working on. Sometimes I kind of think of it as having 2 fingers, one finger on the problem solving or the working, and then one finger on that mindful and awareness. What's my body doing? What emotion is here? What else is coming up? Just giving your brain Just the freedom to play, to think, to plan, to judge, to problem solve, to be frustrated. And then, almost as if you are just slowly and deliberately, use whatever metaphor looks like for you, but just that looking into a cook pot, you look at all the ingredients that are in there, and you put the lid on it. Like, okay, all that's going to just kind of sit and simmer for a minute. I'm going to just go sit and sit. And again, that dual awareness of noticing the reaction to almost putting the lid on the cook pot. I'm like, oh, there's a part of me that doesn't like that. Okay. And I'll sit. And sometimes you can hear those thoughts getting really loud or the emotions getting really loud, and you're just like, okay. It's all cooking. It's all doing its thing. I don't need to poke at it. I'm just going to breathe. I don't have to focus or not focus. I don't have to do or not do. And just sit here. You might notice those little hooks and tendencies to go back and poke at it, to get hooked into the thought stream. You just notice it and just sit. Let it bubble, let it simmer. Let the thoughts do their thing. Let the emotions do their thing. Let your body do its thing. You don't have to do anything to it. You don't have to make it relax. It's just sitting. You can watch mind wandering. You don't have to make the mind wandering stop. It's just all part of the simmering, letting it do its thing. I notice for myself, there tends to be a point where I notice I've been actually holding everything in tightly. And there's almost another double exhale, like, oh, I can relax my attention a little bit. I don't have to pay attention to anything. And then sometimes there's this little panicky reaction that says, yeah, but I should be doing something. I should be like focusing on my body or something. And that's just part of the simmering. The inhale and the exhale. And then just sit. No forcing, no controlling, no guiding, no making anything do anything. Sometimes there ends up being a stillness. It's like that last little bit of efforting finally just relaxes. And there's just a deep, deep stillness. Or sometimes, the bubbling in that pot, those thoughts and feelings and sensations, it gets really loud. You can hear the intensity of the cooking over there. And there's just that satisfaction of knowing, oh, it's cooking. There's a lot cooking. But just really slowing it all down with nothing to do, no thoughts to stop, nothing to pay attention to. Perhaps even noticing a little bit of panic that comes up when there's nothing to pay attention to. Again, there's just that nod of like, oh, okay. Don't have to do anything with it. Just sitting. So whether things get louder or quieter, there's nothing to do with either of them, or whatever it might be in your experience. It doesn't have to give you anything. It doesn't have to do anything. You don't have to be relaxed. It's just sitting. And then from here, bringing your awareness to your breath. Really intentionally inhaling fully, deeply, and then exhaling. Sometimes it feels like waking up from a nap. And just taking a few more breaths, hearing your breath, hearing the sounds around you. Maybe even wiggling your fingers and your toes. And then taking a few more breaths. And when you're ready, opening your eyes.